Hello. Now, the Gina Miller story, the more I look at it, the more I'm concerned about it because Gina Miller has been debanked. Now, she is the anti-Brexiteer, and I'm sure my friends like Maya Tusi are literally whooping with delight about this. But at the same time, it brings up serious problems, and it brings up serious problems for everybody across the political spectrum. And I'm afraid I don't believe Monzo. So the more I look at this thing, the more I smell a rat, because it was the bank's fault. The bank made a mistake, therefore the bank should be apologising, offering compensation. It certainly shouldn't be closing Gina Miller's account because of a mistake that it made. But that is the way the banks behave at the moment. They think they can act with impunity. They make a mistake and then they punish the customer. So I think there are two issues. First of all, I think the idea that a bank is like a greengrocer who can decide who and when a person is served, I think that's wrong. I also think one's got to be very careful about the equality legislation because you can't discriminate against people in terms of gender, in terms of race, and I don't think really in terms of politics. I think that's covered by the 2010 legislation. So the idea that a bank can turn around and say, well, we don't like your politics, therefore you're out, I wonder, maybe somebody can correct me, I wonder if that is quite literally against the law. And I think that might be quite interesting to investigate. I have to check. I've not looked at the legislation closely enough. But I think we need to recognise, and the government needs to put into practice, the fact that it is a fundamental right for people to have access to bank accounts, not only for themselves, but for their businesses. Because if we can't do that, we can't function in the modern age, which because of government pressure, has become so centralised on having credit cards, debit cards, having plastic and not having money, not having cash. We either have cash or we have working banks. I suppose if you want a cash society, you don't necessarily need banks. Banks are a welcome addition to the cash-based system, but cash existed before banks. But if you're in plastic, you can't survive without a bank account. And banks need to be clear and honest, and they need to make it very clear what they will accept and what they will not accept. So if a bank wishes to say, well, this is what we do and this is what we don't do, and they make a mistake, they need to stand by the commitment that they've already made. Their mistake, they sort it out. They don't dump the problem back on the customer. So Gina Miller was refused bank accounts by a huge number of people, a huge number of banks, just as Farage says he's been refused bank accounts by 10 banks. And Farage has actually sent, as I pointed out, up here, this way. Farage has sent a tweet saying that he's very sympathetic to Gina Miller. There may be some irony there, but I think he's got good reason. Yes, it's oh gosh, I got it. It's there. I can't. That way. Can't seem to indicate which way is left, which way is right on my system here. And Monzo accepted her, and now it says that it doesn't deal with political parties. Well, the whole point in her letter, which she makes very clear, is that she went round all these other banks and they all said no. They all showed her the door, and Monzo eventually took her on. So the thought that she didn't tell Monzo that this was a political party, the thought that Monzo didn't look at her email and website, is simply unimaginable. So Monzo says, oh, we didn't realise at the time, now we realise, out you go. it's just not credible. What we've got is overzealous banking that, in Gina Miller's words, is threatening a functioning democracy. And I think she's absolutely and fundamentally right. And the people on the left who are saying, we've got a right, you've got a right to refuse a customer, and all this sort of stuff. Rubbish. This isn't a left-right division. This is about fundamental using the tools that we need in society, and a bank is one of them. And if we can't access a bank, and if the banks simply refuse to support an individual or their business, that means they have to go to another country, and that cannot be right. That cannot be right. So these policies were put forward by the EU, and I think that's one good reason why the EU needed serious reform. One good reason, frankly, given the fact that this has emerged here in the UK, why I'm rather sorry that the UK left the EU, because the UK at this moment now would then start militating against these ridiculous EU laws and get them changed. What's going to happen now? This is going to hit people in the EU as well. And, we just have to, recognise, I don't think Brexit was the answer. From that point of view, I agree with Gina Miller. But I do think that Europe was in danger and was wrong, and I still think Europe is wrong. I think Europe has had a bit of a shake-up because of Brexit. I think we probably did Europe a favour. But Europe has to do much more of a shake-up to be a functioning, democratic and useful part of our global structure. Britain has suffered greatly, and Britain didn't need to suffer. What we needed to do was to call out that Europe was wrong. And my immediate observation of the Europe mess was the way the northern states in Europe bullied the southern states like Greece. And I also thought that the bureaucracy was top-heavy and was not thinking about people. And we've got the same problem here. And coming out of Europe, we seem to be more European than the Europeans.